Why is the USA losing its competitive edge in manufacturing? Now, way back in the late 1800s, you had people like Vanderbilt, who his descendant is Anderson Cooper, as you know, on the media. Um, but, there were powerhouses that were just the powerhouses of manufacturing and strong industry, right? But what the heck was going on? What was really going on at the time that was actually promoting this? Now, I'm going to just diverge on here. Well, I'll just say what the point is right from the beginning, because what's going on is, there's an efficiency of volume. The U.S. manufacturing industry, since there's no longer a retail demand in this country for U.S. manufactured goods as there used to be, you're losing that efficiency of volume. As we'll get onto that in a little bit. Now, also want to say this. There's always been types of laws that were actually put into place to keep the monopolistic powers into power. And in other words, the more rules that you have in place, the tougher it is to start a business. Even this was the Commerce Act of, I think it was 1866. I forgot what it was exactly with the railroads. But that was also a problem for people that were upstart railroads, because they had to comply with all these different rules. As you know, and you've probably seen this on some, specials on TV about a kid trying to start a lemonade stand. There's so many different things that you have to do to get all these permits and things that you can't freaking even start a lemonade stand. But that's one issue. That's one issue. Regulation is one issue why U.S. manufacturing can't compete with China. But the other side of it is volume. Volume is, like, if you look back, and when Henry Ford was making, this is not the Model T, this is a Model A, I think. But when Henry Ford was on the assembly line, and he started the assembly line method, when there was a large number of people that were buying the Model Ts, what was happening was he could actually reduce the price. That's where you want, in other words, there's all these different things you have to do to start up a business, and then once you get it rolling, you want to go on it like cookie cutters, and then you can drop the price, because you got all these different overhead costs. That stays the same pretty much. It's pretty much a given, and once you get going on stuff, you can really drop the price by putting out a number of widgets with the same amount of overhead, so you could drop the price. Problem is, like in the United States, that's not happening anymore, because hardly anybody's buying manufactured U.S. goods. So, if we ever came up with another winter car like the 1964 Mustang convertible, I think a lot of people would not, they probably would be shunning it, and for crying out loud, because it's made in the USA. That's what's going on. A lot of people are buying foreign. And when you start adding in all these different factors about, like, safety requirements and various requirements that have to be in place for, like, in other words, insurance. You got health insurance, you got actuaries, you got the CPAs, you got commercial liability, workers' compensation, safety in a work environment, all that stuff. That's a given. So if you're producing 3 of one thing a year, or 30,000 of something one year, all those costs are going to be pretty much not that different from each other. That's the problem, where not only do we have a lot more regulation in the United States than we did in China, especially EPA regulations, for crying out loud. As a matter of fact, if you look at in the custom cars, if you want to get something hard chromed, you want to send it off overseas to have it hard chromed, because of all the EPA regulations here. It's still polluting the atmosphere someplace on the other side of the world, but you can have it hard chromed somewhere else. That's really what goes on. So this is one of the things, and as people buy less and less U.S. manufactured goods, the prices are going to go up, because per each widget that you make, it's going to have a larger percentage of overhead costs assigned to it. So that's the problem. You got I-9s. You got to freaking figure out. You know, you got to deal with that stuff. You got to deal with the W-9s and all these other different forms, and actually a lot of different taxation issues. So that all remains the same. No matter how small you are or how big you are, relatively speaking, they stay pretty much the same. You'd have to hire a CPA or an expensive accountant to take care of that stuff. And then on top of it, you have to like put all the safety requirements in and have all your insurance. In other words, if you add, you know, say you got commercial liability insurance for like one employee or two employees, and you had versus 25 employees, commercial liability insurance is not going to be 25 times as much. So there's an efficiency of volume. So in other words, the 25 employees might be making a lot more stuff, and you're just putting it out. The overhead per widget that you're putting out is going to be less. So as U.S. manufacturing, the goods from U.S. manufacturing are bought less and less in this country, what happens is that it's like a snowball effect. It's actually pushing them down even further. Now in China, I mean, they don't even have any kind of freaking stuff with the labor laws or, you know, whatever. I mean, they got safety nets outside the windows of the factories so people don't commit suicide, and they just work them to death, for crying out loud, right? They're not going to do that type of stuff in the United States, and I'm not going to say they should do that in the United States, but that's actually where you're talking about a volumetric efficiency. That's going balls to the wall in China. So actually, the more you buy from them, the more U.S. manufacturing is suffering. And you say, well, what can you do about it? I mean, sometimes you can't buy something made in the USA, like a laptop computer or something, or a lot of different things. But there are some things you can. But the volumetric efficiency is drastically being reduced the less U.S.-made goods are being produced. So that's causing the prices to go up. It's not just, you know, the exchange rate or something like that, or the high cost of labor. In other words, if you can have the same amount of people, or not that many more people, with, you know, less overhead per person, putting out a lot more of the goods that people want in this country, well, you can reduce the price and you can be competitive. But once that snowballing effect starts where people are not buying, in other words, anytime you buy something foreign, you're depriving somebody from the United States of a job. That's really what's going on. I mean, sometimes you can't avoid it, and sometimes, you know, maybe it's not that stupid to buy something foreign because it's a ridiculously good deal that you have a utility from. But on the top of it, but on the other side of it is, the more you buy foreign, the less goods are produced here in the United States, and that volume is not there. See, Henry Ford, back when he was producing, this is the Model A, but you know, if you say it was the Model T, when he reduced the price on the Model T, he did that because of volumetric efficiency. And people were, you know, he was able to flood the market. That's not going on today. You know, all the different things that are going on today are pretty much, you know, taken away from, I guess, you know, it's taken away from, like, people that were, you know, in other words, big business in the United States has always been something that has been, you know, an exclusive niche, right? And also, you can also say that big business in the United States itself has a volumetric efficiency whereby small businesses can't get in their realm. In other words, you know, try to be an auto manufacturer today. You ain't going to be able to start up a product like that in the United States. Forget about it, you know. But, you know, also, like I said, once the manufacturing is taken out of the United States, It's not coming back. Period. Never. And this is what the Club of Rome has been freaking pushing for years. That the United States would be deindustrialized. And people are willingly and going along with this and, you know, just doing the bidding on the freaking people on the top. It's amazing. I don't get why they're doing this. There's not a whole hell of a lot you could do about it in some ways, but you can resist them somewhat. The problem is most people are not trying to resist them at all, and that's your problem. So as we freaking lose more volume in the USA manufacturing sector, the price of USA goods is going to go up because it's going to be that much more overhead, insurance requirements, OSHA requirements, all the accounting and attorney fees and all this garbage per unit, assigned per unit of the price of the goods. So the less you freaking, the less you produce, the more the overhead is going to be per unit. And that's another factor. It's not just the exchange rate. So, if people actually said, we're going to buy USA and the hell with this garbage, that would be, sometimes it's only a 1% effort one way or the other to push the hurdle over. A lot of people don't realize that. But a lot of people aren't even making that tiny effort to even buy USA once in a while. Most people are not. And that's a problem.